Let's begin. I guess I will go with instead of the chairs, I will go with what my screen says. So Mark Wilson, you're up.
Okay. Mark Wilson, representing Naumkeag, the trustees of reservations property. And our proposal for this year is going to be conservation of the Frederick McMoney's young fawn and heron sculpture, which was sculpted in Paris in 1890, commissioned by Stanford White, just as the architect Stanford White completed his work on Naumkeag, and it was a gift from Stanford White to the Choates. And it arrived from Paris in 1891. It was put on display in the front of the house to the right of the front door. And then in 1928, Fletcher Steele, who did all the work on the landscape, moved it to the corner of the afternoon garden to give it a more prominent setting. And right now, it has been years, we're talking decades, since this piece was conserved. There's a considerable amount of corrosion on the surface of the piece. It's a large bronze. It stands about 6 feet tall. And so we'll be proposing, it's $11,500 for conservation. That also includes protective coatings once the piece is conserved. And in addition, we need some scaffolding because the piece sits 10 feet off the ground. So it'll have to be scaffolded to be worked on.
Cool.
Yeah. And any questions or?
Anybody on the committee have questions?
Yes, Linda. To remain outdoors.
Yeah, it's in its original setting. So it's a large piece. It will remain outdoors,
Okay.
but it'll also be, it's visible to the public.
Yeah, I'm just going back to, you had said originally it was in a different location.
Mhm.
Was that Stanford White's placement or Ms. Cho?
As far as we know, it was Stanford White. So there's a niche to the right of the front door. And that niche was built as part of the original structure. So it appears that there was an intent to place it there. But by the 1920s, it was overgrown and visible due to the change in the driveway. So it wasn't as visible. So Mabel Choate and Fletcher Steele made the decision to move it to the afternoon garden where it's more
Well, they're
prominent.
historic figures, so there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, that sounds good.
All
We'll
right.
look forward to seeing your application.
Okay. And just a quick question. So that'll include one to the historical commission so that there's a separate.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, and while you're saying that, Teresa asked me to remind everybody that you'll need to put your applications in an envelope and put it in the drop box outside Town Hall, because Town Hall is currently closed. And also a reminder that the deadline is January 22nd at noon. And they will be collecting the applications then. So if your application isn't in by then, you'll be late. And also please send digital copies to the committee. The email address is on the RFP or the request. So we can look at it that way as well. Okay. Let's see. Tim Minkler and Ron Broker, you guys are next.
Actually, Arthur Dutel is going to speak for us first, and we'll chime in when we need to.
I don't see Arthur. Where are you?
Well, he's on my bottom left, but Arthur, you're muted.
Oh, I see
Arthur,
Arthur.
you're
Okay,
muted.
you're A and C. Arthur, you're muted. You need to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you for your understanding of our learning curve.
We've all been through it.
Okay, Gould Meadows. As you know, it's 80 plus acres of land up on the north corner of Stockbridge on 183 and Hawthorne. It's owned by the town of Stockbridge, managed by the Conservation Committee, and at present, a number of volunteers continuing the upgrade and protecting the eradicating invasives and maintaining the trails. Thanks, the CPA has been very generous over the past years, allowing us to do major work and in improving the property, the assets of the town of Stockbridge for the locals and the visitors. This year we have a number of requests under open space. The Stockbridge Conservation Commission has received $20,075 grant from the Invasive Control Management from the Community Forest Stewardship Implementation Grant, that being the state of Massachusetts. Our shared fund for this grant would be $5,250. Under open space, requesting $1,500, continuous stump grinding and removing projected stumps. A group of volunteers usually meet on Saturdays, and we're cutting down what will be the last hedgerow of many, and therefore it leaves the stumps, and we have to hand control the invasives around the stumps. Once they are ground, then they can be done mechanically with brush hogs. So this is an ongoing project, but hopefully will be the last year we have that as an item. Under open space, $500 to hire a professional tree service company to remove unsafe trees along the trail. And these are trees that are usually storm damage that, because of age or expertise, the volunteers choose not to do this work. Under recreation, $1,500, construct a raised walkway over the wetland on the trail south of the milk shed. This material will allow, right now, in the past, rocks were placed there as stepping stones through this wet area. And more recently, large wafers of an oak tree were cut into about 6-inch thickness and placed there, but they are sinking through the soil. This will be an elevated walkway with 8x8 plank cross members and 4-inch planks. The distance will be about 70 feet. And at the beginning of that area and the ending of that area, we'll put down wood chips. So it will be more pleasant, less slippery, and more visually pleasing than stepping stones. The last request, excuse me. Under preservation will be $3,000 for the restoration of the milk shed. Stone wall on the south foundation has settled and caved down, and also replacing missing floor planks. So again, once this is completed, this should be completing the projects of the milk shed, which when the volunteers started, it was so covered with vines and hawthorn and sumac, you could not even see the milk shed from the road or even walking close to it. The last section would be $200 for signage And this is for signage that was up at the corner of Hawthorne and 183. And recently it disappeared and should be replaced. These requests total $11,950. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Can you run over those, just quickly run those figures again for me, please?
Okay.
The stump grinding's how much?
Want me to go from the top down or?
Yeah, just tell me quickly the numbers.
Okay, open space, the 5,250. 1,500. 500. 1,500. 3,000. 200. Comes to a total, of my total is 11,950.
Okay, thank you. I'm not writing as fast as you're talking.
Okay,
My other question is on the pathway from the milk shed.
correct? Yes,
We're gonna need, if it goes through a wetland, we're gonna need conservation approval?
yes, we will.
Okay,
In
And-
our projects before, we always apply to the conservation.
right. And where does it go exactly, Arthur? It goes from the milk shed to where?
It goes west to the large field, which is facing the Mary Flynn Oak.
Okay,
There's a stream that comes the north under Hawthorne, and it spills as a stream for a short distance, and then it flows into a wet area.
so that's the stream that comes from Tanglewood, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sally, it's a continuation of the first bridge with the we put in.
Okay,
The bridge across the stream.
okay,
And we tried everything we could not to mess with the wetlands behind it. And everything just sinks. So we're gonna go over the top of it with 6x6s and then planking, so everything can stay underneath and we won't do any more anything to the mud that ends up behind it.
good. Sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Sally, I have a question. This is
Yeah.
Tom.
Yes.
Not directly related to the application, but speaking about the streams and wetlands, I'm wondering, it's often occurred to me that where the stream crosses the field from 183 going down the hill and across down to the lake, the stream doesn't have any natural growth in the ways of bushes and trees. And it seems to me that in stream management, that might be desirable. And I'm wondering what thought there has been made given to allowing growth along the stream. I know it goes right across the field, and aesthetically it's nice to have a big field. But on the other hand, it seems to me that ecologically it might be a good idea to have some growth at the edges of the stream.
I think it's been mowed for so many years that that I think that it's now become habitat as it is of open field, which is, as you know, rare. And I think we have some hope that we'll have ground nesting birds through there, and the ground nesting birds don't necessarily like to have things in their way.
We can
your
we can
opinion.
confirm
Yeah.
bobolinks in that field.
Oh,
You've seen them?
Yes.
Okay, so bobolinks do not like trees. So I think that was the plan originally, was to have an open field that the bobolink, because they like wide open fields, no trees, and a fairly large area in order for them to be happy. So that was kind of the habitat we were going for.
Okay.
Actually, the Mary Flynn tree and that small Well, there's this, where that stream enters into the field, those trees actually inhibit the nesting of a lot of these birds because it cuts down on the acreage that they need. But we haven't, we're not about to cut down Mary Flynn's tree, and we're not gonna go any more into the big stuff where it comes off the hill. So it works there. We're not gonna mess with it too much. And the big fields on Hawthorne Street, they're pretty much wide open now too. So, and that's even more acreage that's open.
Carl? You're muted.
Hi there. Sorry. Just a quick comment. I appreciate so much what you're doing to conserve Gould Meadows and keep that place beautiful. I just like sort of down the road, I'm a little worried about the trees. There were like 4 or 5 of them that are planted along. I guess it's Hawthorne Street there, between
Hawthorne Road.
the hedge and the field. Just, you know, as they grow up, I'm afraid that they may end up obscuring some of the wide openness of that. I mean, I'm not saying what to do, you know, and I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion about all that, but
There
but
has.
I'm sure. Okay. All right.
Let me speak on the goal, those 5 or 6 trees.
Yeah.
They're American chestnuts, which was given
Oh,
to
are
us
they
by
chestnuts?
the Chestnut Reserve. Our
Okay.
goal is to keep them trimmed to a height as far as we can reach with a pole saw, so that when it does start to leaf out and branch out and spread, it'll be high enough so it doesn't obstruct view from the road.
Listen, if those are American chestnuts, I suspend all opinion. If they make it, that's great.
They've come
That's our
up,
hope.
they've died off, they've come up, and they're
Yeah.
still there though, so.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you very much for the information.
Well, let me comment on one of the signage issue. There was a tree that, well, the sign was for the dedication of the tree to Mary Flynn, and that's the sign that we need to replace because it's gone missing. It may have gotten mowed over, it may have gotten stolen, it may have rotted and fallen to the ground, we don't know, but that's the one we're going to replace. And we have the wordage on that sign somewhere, so we're just going to duplicate what was there originally.
And Mary's gonna come haunt whoever it was who took it.
Bring it back.
Okay. Anything else on Gould Meadows?
No, thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. Michael, do you have things for the town, or are you just listening? And you're muted.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll be joining in on a couple other things. The town was looking at 2 options, which I'll be discussing with the select board. One was for some money for continued work on the Soldiers Monument. And then the other one is the chime tower, but the chime tower estimates have come in and we're waiting on one more. The chime tower is probably gonna be something well outside of this. Right now, we're already sitting at $330,000 between the work on the bells themselves and then the masonry work for the structure. And we should have a final estimate on what the roof cost will be by the 15th. So right now, I'm going to be talking to the select board about the possibilities, being that that's such a historic building, whether we should try to target some historical preservation funds from the state or what other avenues we have to approach that one.
one of the
So-
things that's nice about the community preservation is oftentimes, if you're trying to get state money, they look favorably upon having CPA money, even if it's not a lot, as part of the funding, because it shows that the community is behind the project.
Right.
But obviously, when our total, we figure, is going to be somewhere around 280,000, and only a third of that will probably go toward historic preservation. So 330,000 is way out of our budget. But if you wanted to ask for some money from us, that would probably be acceptable.
All right, like I said, I'll be discussing it with the, well, actually I have meetings with the finance committee and with the select board to discuss that. And like I said, there's still another piece that's gonna push it even higher. So there's a lot going into that. So, yeah, well,
Okay.
if you can, it's something we might do. And then the Soldiers Monument, we just have to figure out what the next phase will be, and we'll put those numbers together for the end of the month. So.
Okay, as I'm sure you know, we set aside $50,000 for that last year.
Yeah.
And that's still sitting in our account, waiting for a finalization on the project.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm sorry, it's Linda. Michael, could you keep the historical commission updated on your planning? And we seem to be missing some pieces of the documents. So could you do that for us?
Sure, I can, I'll make sure on Monday to send the historical commission everything we have. We have the EDM structural analysis that came in just a while ago. I'm not sure if you guys have gotten that.
Not
And
sure.
then
I'm
we'll,
not sure. Yeah.
and then the 15th, we should get the final piece, which is the roof
Okay.
cost estimate.
Okay, 15th of January. Okay. Okay, so it's Peter Williams as the clerk and I'm the chair. So would you love anything new that you've got?
All right,
I'll review our emails and see what we do.
I have Peter, because I know I've already sent him some stuff on this because he was at the other
Okay.
meeting.
Right.
So I'll make sure to get it and then get it to you also.
Okay, that's a good plan. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions on that project?
Sally, and not on the project, just a quick question to you. Is there a way you can adjust your camera? I just see the very top of your head.
Well, it's partly because I'm writing, because I'm taking all the notes.
Oh, I'm sure you are. I was just hoping that we could see your face as well as the top of the head. There,
There,
much better.
now are you happy?
Very happy. Thank you.
Okay. So one other thing that we talked about as a committee is how we really, I think, may consider, we haven't finalized anything yet, but may consider prioritizing things that, like the chime tower and the Soldiers Monument, which are town projects and therefore available to everybody. So just we haven't come up with any particular formula or anything, but just, so everybody's kind of aware that that's something that we're considering.
Yeah, thank you for remembering to mention that, Sally.
Okay, Lori Norton Moffett.
Thank you, Sally. Hi, everyone. What we'd like to present as our project this year is to do an historic structures report on Linwood House, which is the central estate home of the museum property. Just to refresh you, there are 4 main buildings plus some out structures on the property. Linwood was the original estate home built around 1859. We believe it is a Calvert Vaux home, but that has never been fully researched and verified. There's a carriage barn that was built around 1890. And many of you know, we moved Norman Rockwell's studio there when the museum was built on the campus. So that 1830 old barn that Norman Rockwell renovated for his studio, which you have funded preservation on in the past, is on the site. And the Robert Stern building opened in 1993. The Linwood House has 2 outbuildings, a little potting shed and an ice house that used to have ice from Mohawk Lake. And that's in considerable disrepair at this time. We're doing some emergency roof work on it, but there's a lot of history there. And in 10 years ago, 2010, we had Ann Beha Architects do a full historic site plan for the we'll do a full maintenance plan and historic look at the property and site. And we've been working on that for catching up on maintenance, particularly on the old buildings. When we moved the studio, we did a full historic structures report on that building, but there has never been a full and complete historic structures report on Linwood House. And it is the anchor building and anchor property of that estate. So our proposal involves having John G. Waite and Associates do a full historic site report on Linwood House, its outbuildings, and the historic landscape that it sits on. Because the decisions going forward on the work that that building needs, we feel should be really guided by having this report in place. There's been work done on that building. As you know, you have funded some critical work on chimneys and stairs and walls, and that was guided by the Ann Beha plan. But our proposal now is to conduct this full historic site report on Linwood House, because we feel it anchors everything that should be done in the way of decision-making on the entire site going forward.
This will also help us, if I might chime in, Ellen Spear, also here with Laura. This will help us prioritize the work that needs to be done. There will be many things in the next 10 years that will need to be approached. It will give us a set of baseline data. It might even solve the mystery of who designed it when Jack Waite and his associates get in it, because part of what they will do is documentary and historic research for us. So that'll be a great contribution to the town to perhaps settle that once and for all and have us know some new things about the building that we didn't know before. But in presenting that priority list, it will help us understand how to approach the work. It will give us options for historic preservation and conservation work for each of the projects that needs to be done over time and an order of magnitude cost. So it's a really important foundational document for the work that will be needed to be done on Linwood over the next 10 years.
What do you anticipate the cost will be for this?
Well, we're meeting next week with Jack Waite. We weren't able to fit that meeting in over the holidays, so we'll have a better idea at that time. These studies, particularly if we include the landscape, can be in the range of 75 to 100, even higher with the landscape. So what we're thinking is a request of 50,000 for this project. We have tried to be very restrained in the last few years in our requests. We try to alternate from a big project and then to step back and do some smaller projects. So we would like to come in with a somewhat larger request this year if the funds permit.
I think that's going to be high, but given that we have other projects and we have probably
For a study?
27 divided by 3, 80,000 generally speaking for historic preservation.
Right. Well, this was helpful for us to try to understand tonight what the pool would support this year. So obviously we would work within what is available to be distributed equitably across all the projects.
Yeah. There's historic preservation is always our most popular category. Because we have so many wonderful historic structures in town. But that still doesn't mean we'd have more money to
I know.
we would love to have more money, but we just don't.
So
Okay.
speaking of the money, I have a question. That is, in budgeting this, how much consideration are you giving to having the CPA grant leverage other funding?
Thank you, Tom. We always work to do that, and it's been enormously helpful, actually, to have the CPA funding on the various projects that we request support for. So we do have, particularly a couple of donors in mind who are historically preservation minded. Of course, we're always balancing across the museum projects and conservation and our exhibitions and operations while we work very hard to take care of the historic campus and landscape that we inhabit. So particularly now in this moment when we're operating at a tremendous loss to be able to remain open for our visitors during COVID. We're just juggling how to move all of the projects forward, but we absolutely use these grants to leverage other support. And there are a couple of funders that we are in dialogue with that are, their main focus is historic preservation. So we hope they would be excited by the idea as well.
So Laurie, thank you for that. But I was thinking actually more in terms, rather than your individual donors who might also be contributing to some of your other projects, what about foundations or a mass historical commission, or is this state funding that often looks for local matches?
Yeah, actually, I was referencing a foundation that I had in mind that was helpful to us. They did a match when we did the carriage barn roof that you provided critical funding for, and they came in and supplemented that. There are two foundations in particular that like historic preservation grants. There are tremendous pressures on the state at this moment, as you know, for health and services, education, and just survival during COVID. So the money we're receiving from Mass Cultural Council is literally going to help sustain the museum. But we do have, as I say, these couple of foundations interested in this kind of work. It is what they're specifically dedicated to, so they don't actually give to anything else. And it would be very helpful to help leverage their support.
Also, Tom, I'm sorry, Tom,
yeah.
I'm also hopeful that Save America's Treasures is again going to gear up on a national level to be able to help all of us. And they have always required match and additional funding from other places, and the endorsement of this body is just very important to show that it's a really valid and important project in the community, and that helps to leverage federal funds tremendously.
Thank you, Ellen. That's helpful. Laura, but in terms of Massachusetts, I was thinking more of a historic preservation funding rather than cultural funding, so it wouldn't be competing with your other funding.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mass historical round coming up very soon we can investigate.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could investigate that, and if in your proposal, given what Sally has said about, how we have limited availability this time around, and generally, if perhaps in your proposal you could sort of say, ideally, this project will cost X amount, and we would like for matching purposes Y amount from the Stockbridge Community Preservation Committee.
Yes, we will do our best to get those, general roundup numbers together in time for the application. As Ellen mentioned, just having the imprimatur of the town's belief in the importance of these historic preservation grants really does help unlock the other supporters. So we are, we're in the pipeline for dialogue with them. There's just tremendous need across the board, as you know, on everything right now.
Sure. Well, thank you.
For just a minute, it's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
We need to sort of check the community.
We can't hear you very well, Linda.
Okay, can you hear me at all now?
Yeah, better.
Better. We need to check the actual statute in terms of the planning part. Generally, it's nuts and bolts, historic preservation. So in other cases, the Community Preservation Committee in Stockbridge has used administrative funds to help people with planning, because planning, I do not think, is a component of the allowable projects. So we should all look at the statute.
Okay, we'll take a close look at that. I thought it did qualify, but obviously we should all look closely at that and make sure.
It's about, preservation, restoration. They have other words that we don't all use, but it's pretty much on the nuts and bolts side. And so the rounds for Mass Historical Commission alternate between planning and projects. So we've just had a projects round. So planning will come next. So
Okay.
those are the funds you need to look at.
Great. That's a good tip. Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
So just a quick question in terms of Linda's point. Linda, as I recall, in the very beginning days of
Mhm.
the Community Preservation Act, when we funded the Pine Woods Affordable Housing, that initial funding from CPA, that initial CPA funding was planning funding. It was not nuts and bolts. It was the initial planning to help launch the project. So I would think that what holds true for whole affordable housing might also hold true for historic preservation.
Now, it's very important to check that statute because I agree.
Yeah,
Housing probably came from that fund because that one third that we have, that was our big affordable housing project. at
right.
the time. And it also, it started out, perhaps it started to be historic because they talked about using the existing buildings, which didn't meet code and turned out to be a debacle in itself. So
Of the poorhouse.
I'll go back and look at the statute myself because
Okay.
I can't pull it up right now because I'm not able to. Okay.
Also, if we take money from the admin, then that takes it out of sort of a different pot.
It does because they could have up to $5,000, $499 for that as a match.
And that can
We'll all
be,
look closely into that.
that can be available immediately.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Lori. India,
Thank you, everyone.
you're muted.
Good evening, everybody. My name's India Sparts, and I am the curator now at the Stockbridge Library, Museum, and Archives. And many of you probably know Barbara Allen stepped down from that position in October. So I am now taking over. I'm here tonight just to talk about an initiative that we started, have applied, or getting ready to apply to the Mass Cultural Council's Facilities Fund. The HVAC, which I assume all of you know, unit in the Museum and Archives, it's the unit that serves the Museum and Archives specifically, has failed, and we are looking to replace it. We need to obviously apply to the Mass Cultural Facilities
Isn't it
Fund.
brand
We've been,
new? I'm sorry.
let,
Wait, didn't we
let
just
me
put it in?
talk, let me keep talking.
Okay,
Let's talk more. This is something that I think is a good question. The unit in the Museum and Archives was not replaced. It's a separate unit from the entire HVAC system that was installed in the 2016 major renovation. And there were reasons for that. First of all, the unit was installed in 2003. It was running fine. And the decision for budgetary reasons, and because it was a completely separate unit that serves specific needs for the Museum and Archives space, many of you probably have been there, it's essentially one room, was not replaced at that time. So that's to answer that question. And now it's failed. And we are limping along, and we've approached as I said, the Facilities Fund, and they've accepted our intent. And now we're getting ready to submit the application. We're looking for a match to this particular grant proposal. And so I'm here tonight to propose that and to find out, just, let you know that that's our intent.
What do you expect that will cost, India? Or what are you asking from us?
Right. Well, at this point, we're getting preliminary numbers, and we're looking upwards of $150,000. So it's a very big project. There are some implications in terms of the way that the new system, let me also say that COVID, by the way, has closed the museum and the archive. At least walk-in traffic cannot come in, obviously. We do have appointment only. So we're also looking at this as a need to be able to reopen. We would like to be able to, obviously it's a one-to-one match on the Cultural Facilities Fund. So, the hope is that we can raise even 20,000 would be a great match, but I think echoing what everyone else has talked about is having the support of the CPA is extremely important. I was encouraged by the grants officer to talk and to that is an acceptable match for the local cultural council's facilities fund. So ideally, we could have a $20,000 match. And again, we are going to seek other funding. I have been applying for foundation funding to help offset the match. And I've full support from our board to pursue this. I think everyone understands that it's critical that we're able to function, not only to preserve the objects and the artifacts, but to be open when it's safe to do so, and do so in a way that we can have ventilation. And by the way, the facilities fund now is open to having COVID-related equipment as part of the ask. And that is obvious because we're looking at a different health and safety issues coming up with COVID and the outcome of this pandemic. So that is another reason that we're feeling very strongly about pursuing this, whether it's adding or creating or taking on the new, which is not high tech, but having these units that are now out there also take into account the particulates in the air to help filter it, so it can meet what we see as upcoming standards for health and safety, particularly in the museum and archives.
Hey, Michael, might there be any CARES Act funding for a project like that? Because it is sort of about air quality and the COVID point.
We can look into that to see what's available and if it fits one of the criterias. So we can be in touch.
Great.
On that. Yes.
I would love that.
Patrick, would you repeat that, please?
I was asking if there might be CARES Act, federal funds available
okay.
because it relates to COVID.
And as you know, federal funding is certainly a match that can be used for something from the facilities fund. We just can't use state funding. So I'd love that, Michael.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just, maybe I didn't hear everything here, but this would be under the category of historic preservation, I assume?
That's what I would call it. Yes.
And so I'm just wondering, I mean, we're replacing equipment to preserve historic documents or help preserve it, but in terms of actual historical features, I mean, we're not preserving the historical nature of the building. So I'm just wondering if this is a stretch or not a stretch.
Might be a stretch.
I'm not sure that it's a stretch. I think that the things that are in the historical preservation are critical. I really do feel that way.
They just went out.
I went out. I'm sorry.
We can hear you, Carl.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, but no, I just think that the Stockbridge archive is really what can I say? Underestimated. I mean, it's amazing what's in there. So, we have a duty to protect that.
That's, I mean, we all understand that. It's just a question of whether how the regulations are written. If
sure,
yeah, I will check with Boston and see what they say.
Yeah,
thank you.
And my question wasn't to imply that this a worthy request in terms of preserving historic documents. I'm just under our particular purview, I'm just wondering how it applies.
Sure. Of course.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Ellen,
Thank you very much.
you're here for Norman Rockwell, right? Okay. Rick and Joyce.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. Tonight, Sarah Del Signor, wave to Sarah. She is the marketing and development manager at Riverbrook, and I'm the current board president. I've been associated with Riverbrook for 40 years. I started when I was 2, just in case anybody's wondering. Right now, we're representing Rebecca Amuso Wendell, who's the executive director. And she is so busy around the needs of our current global situation that she asked us to step in and represent her, the organization, as well as the board of Riverbrook. And this is our first visit, Riverbrook's first visit to your organization. Just in case some of you don't know about Riverbrook, it's a residence that has been in existence since 1958. I believe the woman's name was Judy McKenna. Feels like a long time ago. So in 75, Joan and Dan Burkhart took over the ownership of the organization, and through their outstanding leadership maintained a thriving, enriching community for all of the women there. The women hold dear their home at 4 Ice Glen Road. Some women have lived there 30, 40, and 50 years. They are proud of the facility, their staff, their activities, and their lifestyle, and they will often remind any of us that they live in a beautiful mansion and we do not. The historic building is a gracious mansion with historic importance that reaches beyond Stockbridge. It was built in 1912 in the time when other Berkshire cottages were being built. It was designed by architect George de Gerstoff and was the lavish summer cottage of renowned painter and stained glass artist Frederick Crowninshield. The Riverbrook women live in a mansion and they beam with pride about the beauty of their home. Our request, this brings us to our request. It is our hope that we will qualify under both the affordable housing purpose and the historic preservation purpose. We are an organization that provides affordable housing to women with developmental disabilities who are unable to earn a self-supporting wage in a historic building that requires carefully planned renovations. For the past 2 years, our capital fund campaigns have focused strictly on fundraising for 2 primary major projects. The first is the installation of an elevator in combination with an accessible bathroom because of the space where the elevator is going, and the back of the building, by the way, as well as a sprinkler system. It is our plan to begin this work in late spring 2021. As you all know, we had planned earlier, but life circumstances got in the way. We have a local contractor who has bid it for the construction, and we have a Westfield area person to do the elevator. The current project is estimated to cost about $340,000. Just remember that those quotes are over a year old. So the reality that those costs will rise is very real. And then obviously, whenever you open up an older building, you always have lovely twists to your plans that you thought you had in place. So to date, our fundraising activities have brought in about $200,000. And the reason I say about is because some money is still coming in from the newest fall fundraiser. And we also have a $10,000 grant from the Jack and Jane Fitzpatrick Foundation. We are respectfully requesting funding from you in the amount of $50,000, though I understand obviously from this conversation that may not be a real request. And whatever, as Lori said, whatever you're able to afford us, we will be thrilled with. The support from the CPA can help us close the gap between revenues raised and the final cost of the project, because we're still a little off, as you can see. The staff and the board at Riverbrook are fully in support of these initiatives. The sprinkler system will buy us time so that we can evacuate the women in the event of a fire. It will also be able to preserve that historic building. a place that our women love and call their home. The elevator will address safety and handicap accessibility and mobility issues. Pam Sandler has created the designs. We have already paid for them. We are ready to roll on all counts. And it is tastefully supportive of the architecture of the building, the ambiance of Ice Glen Road, and Stockbridge as a whole. Our mission at Riverbrook is to create an environment in which women live enviable adult lives. These building projects are designed to maintain that mission and to expand on the building's longevity, allowing it to age gracefully, just as our women are doing. We need that building to remain strong for these women, just as these women have remained strong for the challenges life has presented to them. Caring for them in this historic building, one that includes these additional safety factors, is our next exciting endeavor as a staff and a board, and we appreciate any support you are able to provide working toward this goal. I can answer any questions, I hope. Or Sarah.
Joyce, can you tell us a little about the affordable housing component of Riverbrook?
And I would ask Sarah to jump in too. And what I can add is that we are funded from the DDS. So we get an established amount of money each year on contracts, which is oftentimes an interesting amount given the entire care that needs to go in for the women, because we do food, we do shelter, we do all the requirements of creating a safe home. We do all of their activities. We do the vehicles to get them places. So we are like the parents for these adult women. Not parents is probably a bad word, but they can't go anywhere else and pay a reasonable amount of rent. They are dependent on the state to take care of them financially, and us to make the monies that come from the state work for everybody. Does that help? Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
My reason for asking is the affordable housing component of the CPA is supposed to be buildings that have been created with CPA funding. And so when we went to assist the Housing Authority with their various projects, they put in a new fire detection system and new ground fault outlets and some other things, the new roof and all that. We kind of had to do some finagling and some bullying of town council to get him to figure out how that worked. So the fact that Riverbrook was not built with town or with CPA funding is a little bit of a roadblock.
Okay.
And I'm only saying this not because I'm not in favor of this, because I've known a lot of the girls for a long, long time. Or I suppose I should call them women. But I'm older than they are, so I can call them girls. They are indeed remarkable, but we may have to do some juggling to get it into the affordable housing part.
So is there,
Just following up, if I may, on what Sally just said. First of all, I too personally very happy to see this application, and long admired Riverbrook, and have always been particularly impressed on how active the women from Riverbrook are in town affairs. And they are truly civic-minded people. And this is always something to celebrate, I believe. And in terms of, I just feel that we should really try to do what we can to make this work, because Riverbrook is really a very important asset, I think, to the town of Stockbridge. And I'm wondering the idea that you're combining this with both historic preservation and affordable housing to me sounds intriguing, and that in of itself might be a way to get around the regulations that Sally just referred to. But given that we have more funding really available for affordable housing, and given, as you say, this in many ways really does fit the definition of affordable housing, I think this is, I would be really pleased to see how we might work together to make this work.
Great.
I have a question, if I might, Sally. With respect to Riverbrook, do you not receive support from CATA, and can CATA be of assistance
No, we
relative to this?
don't receive, we pay CATA. We don't, money doesn't come the other way unless they donate to our fundraiser, which I would be willing to bet that they probably do. So I don't have that in front of me. But they're a service that we provide so that the women can participate in any one of a number of the program, the wonderful, wonderful programs there.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
all I can say is here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we would love to help. We're gonna have to look into how we can do that.
Is there something you need me to do or us to do, or do we wait, or we? And
I will have a couple of questions for Boston again, and town council, I guess. If you can get me, do you have your proposal done, Joyce?
It's pretty much yes, done. Yes, it's done. It just gets revised every 15 minutes. But
okay, so if you can send me your in digital form, send me your preliminary, just preliminary. Let me send it on to town council.
Okay.
And have them take a look at it and see what their opinion is.
I did send you one back in probably early December.
Right.
If you just need preliminary, I've changed it up a little bit since then.
Okay, send me your most updated one.
Great, thank you.
And you'll let us know if you need anything else, any other information, because I got lots I can say about Riverbrook and the women involvement in the environment and the community and how they interact, but I didn't want to add unnecessary information tonight. So thank you.
Okay. I will send that out and see if they want to try and tweak it. Or change the language a little bit to make it more acceptable if it's not. But again, like I said, we went through this whole thing with the housing authority of the fact that the building was not built, but we're using CPA funding, which seemed to be a big roadblock. And I said, but we don't have any buildings in town with CPA funding. So if we're going to do anything with affordable housing, we can't, which seemed ridiculous. So in any case, I'll send it on and see what they have to say.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah. All right, Sarah, you're with Riverbrook. That's all you're okay. Arthur, we got you. Bonnie. And Rick, I guess. Are you guys together?
I hope so. Yeah.
On this? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, 100%.
All right. All right, cool. Mostly, I'm Bonnie Hartley. I'm a member of Stockbridge, Muncie, Mohican Nation, and I work for our tribe on our historic preservation interests. So we have another historic preservation proposal. And this project that we would like to propose is for a Mohican historical survey of the field arboretum. We feel that this fits well with the goals of the committee and preserving important places in Stockbridge, because it's a site that I guess I kind of look at it as a somewhat overlooked resource for the Mohican cultural significance, as well as to the town, which is closely woven together. But the Field Arboretum site, which is owned by Laurel Hill Association, who's in support of our project, would be to conduct a GIS mapping survey of the site, about maybe almost 10 years ago, the CPC supported our tribe with doing a ground penetrating radar survey over a small portion of the site, which is where the location of the second meeting house site for the town of Stockbridge in 1783, which was where the second meeting house location of where the political and religious meetings were held in the tribe or in the town. And so we wanted to take the ground penetrating radar results that were already done that are currently just in a, in a report, and it shows the anomalies of the soil over there for where the second meeting house site is believed to be. But we want to plot that onto a GIS map so we can show and better, preserve and protect that location of where the second meeting house site, as well as overlay that with the information about the original Mohican landowners of that parcel before the meeting house site, which are, this is thanks to Rick's research on our tribal members, Wawampakunit and Chikansan, which are both individuals that we are members of our tribe or direct descendants of. And so we want to include their history and biographies and describing the site. And so all together produce a GIS map that we can use for ongoing, preservation planning of the site, the biographies, and better written description about the, the significance of the site for the Mohican history, and the meeting house, and use that to work with the Stockbridge Historical Commission on revising the National Register listing. The Field Arboretum's part of a National Register Historic District of North Church Street and Larrywog Crossroad. And right now there's just kind of a brief mention about the history or significance of that site. And that's something that we could greatly augment with especially with the Mohican history. And further, the Laurel Hill Association a few years back had granted the whole Field Arboretum to our nation's, the Stockbridge Munsee community, as a Mohican burying ground location. And we've, we're grateful for that and have been able to take advantage of that for, the difficult occasions where we're in need of reburying an ancestor back home in the area. And so that's another layer of why the preservation and better documentation of the site would be important, which I think that meets our tribe's interests, but I think that's very closely tied to the town's history as well, and honoring and recognizing Mohican ancestors. So I think those are some of the reasons why we're especially focused on that property. And the Laurel Hill Association has also indicated that as part of this project, they would be able to work with us on a deed restriction for the burying ground, so that, again, for preservation planning into the future, that the site is actually better protected and designated for the burying ground portion of it. So our request is $20,000 is our budget estimate for the project. But of course, as others have said, if that's outside of the realm of feasibility for the funds this year, then we're happy to adapt and perhaps just accomplish less than what we'd planned for this year. Oh, thank you.
Are there folks buried there currently, Bonnie?
We've conducted reburials there along with Rick. He helped us. So we just had, without having a map, he was able just to show us where we thought there were no other burials, so we weren't disturbing. But with having this greater, added benefit of the mapping and being able to plot the burials, which we have the equipment for that, we could, better plan for the future so that they're documented. And of course, that information would be, kept limited to who accesses that. But yes, we have reburied there. We always only rebury ancestors who are from the vicinity. So, in this case, around Berkshire County, if there's no other safe location for them to return to, then we're grateful to have this. This is the only reburial site that we have in all of our territory from today's Berkshire County. So it's really important to us.
So Bonnie, just for my information, what's the connection between the Field Arboretum and the Indian burial ground at the edge of the parking lot? Or are they connected, or I'm just a little confused here?
The Field Arboretum, from my understanding, is that with the entire parcel that Laurel Hill Association owns. So it's where the second meeting house site and the whole rest of the property there.
Can you describe just where that is?
It's I think it's called Old Church Street. Rick, maybe this is where
Yeah,
you come
Old
in.
Meeting House Road and North Church Street intersection.
Well,
So across
having
from it, there's a
having better information about it would be terrific. You know.
Yeah, that's what we kind of feel like it's very significant, but currently overlooked. You know, most people don't know about it, and it's kind of out of the way. And
First I've ever heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no markers or anything there.
Yeah, there's one marker commemorating the church. It's on the street across from where the church was.
Right.
And
Rick, it's my favorite marker in all of Stockbridge, because
Yeah.
instead of saying on this site is the Second Congregational Church, it says across the street from this site. And I have never known why they put the marker across the street instead of on the site.
Just one thing to remember too is the LHA's policy from my time there was always, because of the sensitivity of so much of what's in the ground there, both human remains and potential artifacts, that this isn't really something that we necessarily want to promote as a town, as a location.
yeah, so we had a meeting with the governing committee. It's called from the LHA yesterday. And that was, part of the discussion. So we kind of went over that, it's not information like the specific mapping of any burial sites or something, of course, wouldn't be anything publicly available. But the goal is for preservation planning so that, for example, right now, if you would plan any kind of project there, the state doesn't have any record whatsoever of this being, significant site. I think they have the marker listed or something, but if we could work with them on finding an appropriate way to designate it as, a cultural site without giving great detail on specifically where someone is buried, that would help us. I guess one question that Laurel Hill had was they were really supportive of the project and, the preservation aspect of it, but they were asking if all that was needed would be a letter of support from Laurel Hill Association as the landowner, or if the tribe is the applicant.
They would have to have a letter of support, yes.
Okay.
Because we can't really approve work on a property that isn't owned by the person proposing the work.
Yeah, okay. That's what we had done for our past application, but I just wanted to make sure.
Sally, I'll pull together a history working with Bonnie, and we'll get that to the committee.
Awesome, thank you. Always so interesting. Anybody have any questions for Bonnie or Rick? Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Carl?
Oh, me? Oh, no.
You have something?
I'm just standing here. No. Eventually you'll get around to the fountains. I'm going to let Katie take the lead there. What's
Okay.
next?
So you're next on my screen. So.
Oh.
So,
okay.
I'll take it.
Katie, do you want to lead off here?
Yeah, sure thing, Carl.
Please.
Thank you. So Carl and I are here for the cat and dog fountain and the watering trough. They probably don't need much of an introduction. We have started off with a grant that we received previously that enabled us to hire a fountain consultant who got us started. And these are both town-owned properties, by the way, of course, highly visible. And we also have used Foresight to help us with generating requests for proposals and with engineering plans.
Sorry, Foresight, did you say?
Yep, Mark Folk, he's been very helpful. And we've generated RFPs for the restoration of both works. And the quotes there was quite a disparity in the quotes that we received. We're hoping to finalize a contract with Jeff Kulik. And but that is not quite. Mike Canales is here, and we're also very fortunate now to have Mike from the town hall, because one of the things this project really needed was somebody, a partner at the town hall, who could really help us fulfill some of these functions, things like generating requests for proposals. And so we have that now. And thank you, Mike. So depending on what happens with, we're hoping to finalize a contract, but if for some reason we can't do that, we then would be looking for additional funds to hire someone else to do the other bidder to do the restoration. There's also the question of utility work for the cat and dog, which involves work on the basin as well as the capstones. So we're looking at potentially, and this is if we cannot finalize the current contract that we're looking at. We're looking at potentially in the ballpark of $61,000 for restoration and $40,000 for the utility work, which is the basin and the capstone work at the cat and dog fountain.
But the fact of the matter is that if we are able to proceed with our current plans, and I got to tell you, this whole process has been like pulling teeth in terms of getting bids and moving forward with plans. You know, the current CPA appropriation is not far off. I think that what Katie and I are saying here today is that as we are information gathering in the next few weeks, that you know, we may find that we may be needing to come back for a request for additional funding. As far as what we've spent so far, it's nominal. I mean, what is it, Kate? $5,000. I mean, it's been modest. But you know,
So far we've spent 13,300. So we have 46,700 left. But regardless, even if we're able to finalize a contract, the current contract that we're hoping to finalize, we will still need funds for the utility work at the cat and dog.
But the fact of the matter is, we're getting down to real numbers, and hopefully we'll be able to report those back to you. I was hoping that we would have those in hand today, but we don't. But we're getting close to some real numbers on those two projects, and but we're feeling very good about how it's going. It's just been slow, you know. So
if I'm understanding what you just said, the $40,000 that you needed, you've pretty much got the funding for.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
No,
All right. So the $61,000 is what you may still need.
Excuse me.
Am I?
That's not correct.
Okay.
So
you lost me.
So potentially what we'll need, if we are able to finalize a contract with one of the bidders for the restoration work, the one that we hope to finalize a contract with currently, then at that point we would be left needing somewhere in the ballpark of 40,000. But if we are not able to finalize that contract, then we are going to be asking for, you know, we are going to need quite a bit more.
Yeah, the alternative bidders have been much higher. Another thing that is actually worth taking note of, and to share with this group, is that in talking with the town water department, Mike Buffoni and so forth, you know, one of our first objectives was to introduce recirculating pumps for both town fountains, and as we kind of have been delving into it over the last year, it's become clear that actually there's enough water in Stockbridge, enough water pressure, and the cost of sending town water through those fountains is not prohibitive, and actually compares favorably even over a fairly long period of time with the cost of putting in electricity and pumps and recirculation and so forth. So that may actually end up being a savings in terms of an aspect of the project that was going to be quite expensive. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't think that I would have come around to that point of view, but we've had a bunch of conversations, and frankly, it does seem like, just pouring water out of Lake Averick into the town fountains isn't such a bad idea. So we've been doing it for 100 years, and maybe we should just keep on doing it. So
So I think, so that I did factor that aspect of the project into these figures that I've provided. What we will have an update for you on soon, I hope, is the status of the contract that Mike is working on with one of the bidders. And I know Mike is in contact with the bidder, and he's doing everything he can to work things out such that we can proceed there.
Anyway, so what I guess what we're saying is we're bumbling along. We may come back with at the application date with the request for additional funds. But hopefully with better detail about what those additional funds would be for. We definitely have much more information than we did when we made an application.
All right, anybody have questions? I have something that occurred to me, just to remind everybody that if you have a project out there that you have received funding on in the last year, we do need your report. Actually, because they're supposed to do it annually. We need your report on the progress. You don't necessarily have to be complete. We just need to know where you're at and what you're doing, and what your anticipated end is going to be, because we will not grant any additional money unless we have those reports. Just saying.
Katie, are you familiar with the paperwork involved with that?
It's really simple, Carl. It's just a report saying, this is what we've done. This is how much money we've spent. This is how much work we still need to do.
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to generate right now. So
right. So it needs to be in writing, though.
No problem. Okay. That's
the form. Is the form posted on your?
There's no form. It's a totally free form thing.
Okay. And then I have a question for you, Sally. I don't know. Did you receive the email I sent you earlier in the week?
I don't know.
I sent it to your town email.
Oh yeah, I've been having my grandson drop my computer.
Oh no.
And I've been having computer issues, and getting into the town email has been harder than it has been previously, but I will go and check. Thank you, Katie.
I think I got the answer now. I was just wondering if I should be contacting you or someone else when there's.
Yeah, you can always, if you send it to my AOL, S Underwood Miller, all one word, at AOL, I'm guaranteed to get it. If you send it to town, I get it sporadically.
Well, Sally, I think what you're asking for is essentially what we're trying to provide. So
yes, but I would like it in writing. That's
absolutely. No,
yeah.
we would like it in writing too, and we just have to nail down some factors here. So, but we like I said, we're in a much better position, and I think that God willing, we're going to be seeing some progress on those projects for next year.
Okay, great. But just, you know, a brief description of what you've already done is what we're looking for.
Sure.
I can take care of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's see, where are we? Andrea, Housing Authority. Andrea, you're muted.
Here
There
I
you
am,
go.
Sally,
Okay.
and the rest of the committee. Hi, so this year, I know I had sent you an email about our Heaton Hall sign blowing over in a high windstorm. So we are working on a proposal to put in to have that sign repaired and refurbished. I don't have any estimates as of yet. I'm hoping it's going to be 5,000 or less.
Okay.
I don't know if that should be historic preservation. It's the original sign from
I
Heaton
would certainly
Hall.
think so.
Oh, it blew over. Oh, I didn't even notice. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
me either.
That's terrible.
I didn't either. The police had to come and tell me. I felt terrible. And I love that sign. It blew, the metal sign blew
Yeah.
off right before Thanksgiving in one of those high windstorms.
Ouch.
Oh, bummer. Does Linda, does that have historic standing at this point?
Well, that's a hard one because the Fitzpatricks had it in their possession for a long time.
Can't hear you.
The Fitzpatricks had this sign in their possession for a long time.
Okay.
Before it went back to the site of Heaton Court. So,
Oh.
I can't tell you. That's an unusual one.
Well, from my own personal perspective, having spent the majority of my life on Prospect Hill and going past that sign, not every day of my life, but certainly a significant number of days of my life. I mean, one of the things that we're permitted to do as the Community Preservation Committee is at our historic preservation component is to determine that something has historic preservation worthiness. So if it doesn't, perhaps we could undertake a decision that it has historic preservation worthiness.
Well, that would be evaluated by the Historical Commission. And then
Exactly.
after our meeting. So the question is, do you have any estimates? I mean, you've got 3 weeks to write the application. We could do a little investigating and see how that would qualify.
You know, I'd say it would, but
Well, my personal opinion is that it would, but
no.
I think
my personal opinion isn't worth much.
No, it's definitely an artifact.
Yes.
So under whose ownership and how that is done would be the question. We have to figure out how much it would cost, or actually the housing authority is going to have to figure out what that will be.
I have sent out requests to 3 businesses. One man contacted me. He's from New York, Austerlitz, New York. And he was supposed to come and look at it, but I haven't heard. So I'm working on it, trying to figure out a price, a cost on this.
3 weeks until the applications are due. If I have the date.
Okay. So Andrea, I think any information that you can find on the sign to send to the Historic Commission will be helpful, even if it's not, you know, complete and part of the final application.
Okay.
You know, just keep them in the loop so they can assess what, you know, what historic significance this sign has. Because as I say, we can, as a committee, we can make that determination that it has historic significance to our community.
It's hard to imagine that it wouldn't, but.
Sally?
Yes.
There's an archive in the Red Lion Inn on the top floor. Kathleen Opperman has taken care of that for years and years, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if there wasn't information about the original hotel, the sign, et cetera, if that's one place that somebody wants to check.
Whose job is that?
Kathleen, who, to check it? The nice gal from the Housing Authority, but
All right.
it's Kathleen Opperman who would know what's there and where to find it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't know if there might
Contact
be
her.
something in the library, museum and archives as well. I don't know that, but might be someplace to ask.
Okay.
Absolutely, Sally.
Because
Absolutely.
they might have, I'm sure they have photographs of it. I think I have a postcard with the Heaton Hall on it.
They have some history as well in our files, which I'll go through. Photos. Okay. And so then there was one other. We have projects in the works now that DHCD, is funding. And we have a lot of our buildings, the siding boards, they're wood, are no longer weather tight. They've become loose, they're deteriorating, the water has come behind it. So I'm wondering if the CPA would be able to fund some of that, the replacement of the boards. We have a project we've had to split up into 3 phases for building B, C, and D. But we also have some of these boards on the other buildings. I don't know if that fits in there because of the weather tight and the water getting behind there.
It sort of falls maybe
Okay.
into the maybe category. Question
All
is
right.
whether it's maintenance that should have been done or whether it's capital improvement. I think that would be the determination that town council would make. So again, that's
Okay.
maybe if you can send me some preliminary information, I can send it off to them and they can make a determination.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right. Anything else?
Sally,
Anybody have questions?
I think that's
Sally, would you like me to chat about a concept we have?
Sure.
Okay, if I might indulge everybody, have everybody's indulgence. We're interested in having talked with a number of the residents as well as select board members of the town. We're interested in moving forward on a housing trust fund, which basically would enable first-time homeowners to be able to get some down payment assistance. And this would not be, this would be a loan, if you will, payable, repayable through a mortgage or a home equity loan. But basically, this would give us the ability really to recruit or rather incentivize young people, young families to live in Stockbridge. And, we look only at our police department, fire department, and town administration. And many of these folks do not live in the town. So therefore, what we're looking to do really is to establish a housing trust fund, which would provide upwards of 5 families for the first year down payment for housing. And, just an aside that basically in 2010, 1,700 homes were owned by 1,000 full-time residents. And according to Michael Bly in October 2020, uh, only 600 are owned by town residents. So we're really offering this proposal. We want to bring this forth. We feel it's very, very important to be able to get young people to live in our town and also to support our town. And concurrent with that is the thought of developing a housing repair trust fund for residential maintenance, basically to support our elderly residents, 65 and over, with some financial assistance, again, a loan to be repaid through a mortgage or a home equity vehicle to repair such things as roofs, siding, if you will. This would really avoid blight and poorly maintained homes in our neighborhood. And many of these folks have electrical repair problems, roof leaks, septic system issues, and they would far rather live in their home than let it deteriorate. So I think that those are two concepts. They can be separate and discrete. They can be integrated into a single fund. We would like to bring this forth for the committee's consideration.
Jay,
Yes, Carol.
hi. Is the housing repair trust in the form of a loan as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and my next question, with respect to the housing trust fund, do we have any housing stock left, Jay? And I'm not being funny. I wrote a couple of articles working with the registrar of deeds. Housing stock in South County is disappearing.
It's disappearing, but a lot of it is Airbnb. 40% of it is upwards of Airbnb, and I think basically we want to try to give young people an incentive to live here. There is stock. Yes, there are still homes for sale in Stockbridge, but I think we need to put this out there and give people an opportunity to access it. Did that answer your question?
Jay, I have to tell you, it's exciting for me to hear you talking about this, because one of the things that we deal with on the Historic Preservation Commission is sort of demolition by neglect.
Yep.
And it's very tricky. Obviously we're here for, community goals that that don't want to overlap with individual owners and God, let alone the churches, but I think that there's a way in which even small amounts of money from the community toward maintaining historic properties could really be significant.
Well, just Kyle, to bring forward your point, there was a house on Castle Hill Road that had to be demolished, and it went up at auction, and somebody bought the land. I think the amount of money was $10,000, and the house was lost.
Yeah.
So I mean, your
Jay?
point is very valid.
Jay, it's Kate. So on planning board, I've seen 2 properties where the claim was that they were just, a danger and a threat and so on. And when we actually looked at them, in both cases, the foundations and the structure was really sound. And
Kate, this wouldn't be an arbitrary or capricious decision. There has to be a structure set up for this. Basically, there has to be a fund, there has to be a bank, there has to be an inspector. There's a whole host of things. We're not gonna just say, hey, I'm gonna give Carl Sprague $20,000.
No, it's a bigger
No, but-
conversation. I think
yeah,
we might need to form like a little subcommittee or something like that to investigate some kind of structure for this. Because the fact of the matter is that the pressures and are all working in the opposite direction, and between building codes and new people coming into town and new owners trying to figure out what to do with their properties. I mean, the pressure is entirely in the opposite direction. Anything we can do systematically to set up something to protect some of our historic structures from neglect would be spectacular. I think
So Patrick, question for Patrick, what's the status of has Mike started looking into a short-term rental bylaw?
I think that we're going to at least have some ideas that we're going to talk about over the next 30 to 45 days.
Great. Hi, Mike. You're still here.
Jay?
Just to amplify some of Jay's points. One, on the Housing Repair Trust Fund, it's really a self-sustaining fund because the repair is typically done at a very low or zero interest rate in sort of a balloon that is paid back on change of ownership. So while there's a capitalization of the fund, obviously, over time, the money gets repaid, whether it's by an heir or, by the owner if they move out of the house. And that then goes to fund future projects. So it's not like this is just able to run one round of repairs. That over time can fund many rounds. In fact, a lot of towns around Massachusetts do this, and often beyond the first capitalization haven't had to put any more money in because it keeps coming back into the fund. And both, I think, the housing repair and housing trust funds would be kind of income qualified. So obviously there would be a set of criteria that would allow one to be, and it might be asset qualified too, for all that matter, that might allow someone to access the funds. And mostly what you want to do is, like you were saying, not have the properties deteriorate to the point where they're not fixable. There's a lot of, I think trying to get young people who are typically of more modest means, but there's also a lot of elderly of modest means in this town. And this really addresses folks where most of their assets are in their house.
I think the point also to bear out what Patrick has said is that if we can allocate some monies at least for the 2022 budget to begin work on this, so we don't lose another year, I think it's very, very important. And we do have some legal work that's been done on this already. So I think we're looking for support of this group.
Well, Jay, count me in, please.
You're not on CPC,
Just as a slight sidebar, the very pretty town where we shot the Grand Budapest Hotel in Germany, and which has become a little bit of a Hollywood magnet. Honestly, if you go down to the town hall and you need to repaint your facade, and it costs 20,000 euros, they'll give it to you. So it's a different society. I'm not saying that we should be that,
but you're on the right.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it takes work.
Well, I have to say that, I'm one of the original members, along with Tom and Linda, of the Community Preservation Committee. And it was my desire from the beginning that this is probably the most important aspect of what we do. So I'm delighted that Jay has taken this on and that he's been doing the research. In terms of I know that it's been done in other towns and
Lennox and Great Barrington.
yeah, I just read about that. So that part of it is fabulous. I'm not sure about the maintenance part, because there's a big thing in the Community Preservation Act that prohibits maintenance, stuff that you should be doing along the way. So that may be a separate discussion and a separate funding pot.
No, that's why I'm suggesting that we need to have a committee or something like that to
Right.
actually try to iron out how do we move forward from that? I mean,
I think what our thought here is that we allocate monies for a purpose of a housing trust fund to be determined whether it's actually housing and or maintenance, and the committee can establish the ground rules as we move along with this. That would be
Again, I think maybe that has to go to town council, just to find out how what the restrictions are on maintenance, because I know that maintenance is not something we're permitted to do.
I understand, and I respect that, but I think that it's still a discussion that needs to take place.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I agree. But I'm not sure that that's something we can do, but I think the housing trust certainly is.
Yeah, but that's what worries me. Jay?
Yes.
Well, I'm supportive of both these ideas. I mean, I think they're both wonderful. That doesn't mean I don't have concerns. With respect to the housing trust, you keep saying younger people and full-time residents. Can we actually say anything about sales that is in any way discriminatory? Young rather than old, full-time resident rather than part-time?
It has to be couched. It has to be couched with income, with family size. There are a number of ways to do this type of thing.
Okay, so we can't do it directly. I'm right about that.
Well, it'll be that legal counsel will set up the criteria to do this.
And we're having some.
I mean, I don't want to end up, excuse me, Carl. I don't want to end up subsidizing somebody who wants to open an Airbnb.
Absolutely not. I'm with you 100%.
Okay, good.
I
Thank
think,
you.
Carol, I think it's been done in many other communities, and
Correct.
there are ways.
There's a way, okay.
There are ways to restrict it to first-time home buyers.
Correct. Family size, income size.
Families with first-time home buyers.
Can we require that they live in the house, that this can only go?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, it has to be their primary residence.
And it's not, the house can't be sold for 5 to 10 years. There are ways around
Oh
it.
my God, Jay, that's fabulous.
Okay.
It is.
I'm sorry.
We're having a lot of, it's
I don't wanna
really
play my
a
whole
really
hand
interesting
now.
conversation that I don't want to make this meeting go on for all night, because I think it's probably going to take a year to talk through all this stuff.
Well,
but,
I think the thing at this point to do is to make a request for, a reasonable amount of money that we should seed this project with.
Yes.
And then we can vote on that, and then we can flesh out the specifics as time goes on.
I think that's a good idea.
So,
Great
I have
idea,
a quick
Sally. Thank you.
question, if I may, Sally. Back when we were doing the initial affordable housing project at Pine Woods, Construct was a partner. And I believe Construct is currently active in Great Barrington with their housing trust fund, which I think is somewhat comparable to what Jay is proposing. Jay, have you been in touch with Construct? Are they advising on this?
We've had preliminary discussions with council and preliminary discussions with Lennox and so forth. We have access to these individuals, but I think the point that Sally has made to have an amount of seed money, at least in the 2022 CPA articles, is an incentive to move forward. And obviously, Carl's point, to bring a committee, to have a committee, that there'd have to be a board and criteria that approve these things. There's a lot of work to do, Tom.
I gather all that, but specifically to my question about Construct in Great Barrington, which does serve the South County as a whole, have you consulted with Construct?
I have not, no.
And also the CDC.
Jay,
Not,
I'm talking to them too about some of my family projects. So let's you and I get in touch. It would be great to talk to you about it.
the Community Development Corporation, also in Great Barrington, was another component of the Pine Woods project.
Yes.
So they would be good. They would be a good resource as well.
I just would like to close with the
They're
thought.
not very active.
I'd like to thank you all for your support and your encouragement on this. It's not easy. There's a lot of work involved, yet it's a terribly important thing to preserve the population of our town.
Well, I
Thank
can't
you.
tell you how much I appreciate your bringing this forward. It's fabulous.
Yeah, so do I, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is good, and let's not forget the 42% of the population here that is between the age of 20 and 59. We do have young people here. That's as of the 2018 census.
I know they keep on coming over and violating my COVID bubble. So
I have a question for Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's still not clear to me what you consider capital investment versus maintenance, but the Pine Street tennis courts, the fence needs to be replaced and the courts need to be resurfaced. And I will fully admit, with proper maintenance of the courts, meaning cracks were filled on an annual basis, it would not have been destroyed, but it's unusable, practically unusable.
That's town
And
property.
Maintenance.
that maintenance. I think
It
it's all
depends, Steve. It depends. If the courts need to be entirely replaced,
they
Replace them
I mean,
all,
like-
Steve. Don't fix them.
Right.
dug up and replaced, it may be a capital one-time. I think you kind of have to think about it as a one-time thing. That obviously in another 20 years, it probably would have to be done again. But if it's not just sort of fixing it, then it can be considered. If it's maintaining it or repairing it, then it's not.
So what would happen is we'd pay about $13,000 to resurface it, meaning they'd pull up the current surface, lay down a new one, and then we'd have an annual contract of $500 for them to maintain it. So it would last more than 20, 30 years, whatever we got out of it last time. It's just been
Right.
neglected.
And we could pay the 13, but we can't pay the 500 annual.
Right.
Right. So it
And-
sounds like that's kind of like the Gould Meadows project a little bit.
A little bit like Gould Meadows. And
Yeah,
the
where
fence-
it's kind of all gone downhill and now it really needs major work.
Correct. And the same issue with the fence.
Steve, you probably should bring Riggs in because I believe that property is technically owned by Austin Riggs.
Yes,
That
it is.
complicates things.
That does.
They would have to sign off on it.
Yeah.
The tennis courts, there's an agreement between the town and Austin Riggs that the tennis courts are used for the enjoyment of the community, and then the town agrees to maintain them. So there is an agreement already in place, a linking document between the two organizations. But it falls to the town.
As long as that agreement's still enforced, and we can still contact them to see if they want to review that agreement, but I can do that.
If they own the property, we would have to get them to sign off
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
Right, it doesn't matter. We still need a letter from them saying it's okay.
Okay. And it's the same issue with the fence. on that property. It's past its lifetime and has to be replaced. I assume that would be
Same thing.
same thing. Yeah,
It would be a capital improvement. In
capital.
fact,
Right.
yeah.
So you're
Other
asking-
than the bar hanging down, Steve, what's wrong with the fence?
It's just, it lets balls through. It's been degraded because of the plant material was never removed from the base of it over time. So it's not very sturdy. And there's just newer material that would make it less rusty, better conducive to, a longer lifetime. We could replace that broken bar, and we did get a quote for that, but the fence company said the fence is really no good and we should just replace. And of course they're going to say that because they want the sale, but they showed us some other areas that really were.
But it is Austin Riggs property?
Yeah.
They own it. Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole other subject.
Well, maybe, has anyone asked them if they would be interested in helping out?
I can do that. Yep.
Does Austin Riggs did they pay taxes? Mike?
Oh,
No,
No.
they do a contribution though, don't they?
They do a pilot.
Certainly
for
do.
the town.
Yeah.
A payment
They
to
don't
the
do a
town.
pilot, but they do a
In lieu of?
yeah, they give us money every year. It's around I think it's around 16,000.
I think you're right, Gary.
This has nothing to do with community preservation, but it irritates the daylights out of me that they park up the entire street. Just saying. Michael, sorry.
I have to run, but I want to compliment Patrick on his 2 screen images. One of him pre-meeting and one of him during the meeting, one of him post the meeting. But
Yeah,
Anyway.
I have to go too, but thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Katie.
you, Kate.
It's been a huge pleasure to talk to you. I think this is a really constructive check-in, and we'll try and get our acts together for the next one, for the actual application. Okay, thank you.
Hey, we didn't
Thank
hear from
you.
Lillian.
Oh,
Okay,
wait.
Lillian, you're on.
Hello. So I'm here representing Berkshire Theater Group as per usual. So this year we're actually moving away from the main stage and looking towards the Unicorn Theater, previously known as the Melon Barn, previously known as the Hay Barn at Council Grove. And we're starting to undertake a massive project, which is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're hoping to start that with, we have 4 priorities right now that we're waiting to hear bids back on. One of them is some structural shoring up in the barn where the walls have started to bow in the area in the U opposite from where the theater is located, the other side of the barn. And then there's also windows and trim along with doors need to be completely replaced to preserve the interior. Then we have accessibility upgrades we're hoping to do. And those are kind of the 3 main ones right now. And we're just waiting to see bids back on them so that we may just apply for one of those. If one of them is $15,000, we may apply for 2 of those if they're each $3,000. So those are the ones we're going to start with. And we're hoping to, our initial plan was that this round of CFF funding, we would be applying for it for this project. And so we do the CPA and the CFF, and we get to do more of the project simultaneously. However, our Pittsfield CFF project got pushed because of COVID into this year. So we will be unable to apply for the CFF this round. So we're looking at doing that next round. So we're hoping to do some of the more immediate capital projects that really need to get done with CPA money now, and then leverage that to get CFF funding in the next round afterwards.
So, Linda, does the BTF barn have historic standing at the moment? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Lillian, as we've been around before with a number of projects, not yours necessarily. The question is the historic significance of what you're doing, whether, you know, like replacing windows, for example, if they're just plain old ordinary windows, that's probably not something we would consider. But if there's some historic feature of what you're what you're needing to work on, that would be, we always say the asphalt roof versus the slate roof. For an example, that, you know, if in order to preserve the historic nature of the project or of the building is prohibitively expensive because of that, then that's what we look at, rather than just plain old ordinary fixing, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, I feel like I almost know more than other people that about the status of that barn construction and the Unicorn Theater, because I've spent a lot of time down there. I have actually gone so far as to send at one point when the roof was leaking, I sent my contractors down there to repair a part of the roof some time ago when I had some money. But the thing is, it's a situation of chronically deferred maintenance that has been just horrific. And we, in the Berkshires, we keep on relying on theater companies like Shakespeare and Co. and BTG and so forth to maintain large properties. I mean, Tangle is almost the same, but these are communal spaces that require funding and it's not available. So it's hard to blame the organizations for failing on these fronts. Yeah, no, I understand the line between the maintenance and historic preservation, but in the case of the Melon Barn and the Unicorn Barn there, I mean, you're right up against like losing that building.
Sally, this is Linda. We're going to look forward to all the historic preservation applications. Sign off now. So,
sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
Look forward to all of the historic preservation applications, but I can't stay on any longer. So, thank you.
I agree.
Thank you, Linda. So
Anyway.
I am intimately familiar with that barn, Carl, from probably when you were in knee pants, as they say.
Absolutely.
But anyway, yeah, so Lillian, we're happy to see what you're thinking about doing. I would strongly suggest that you send to Linda what you're thinking about so she can vet what is possible and what is not possible for us to fund, because as much as we would like to A, fund everybody, and B, help every organization in the Berkshires, A, we don't have the money, and B, we're restricted by the tenets of this Community Preservation Act. So we don't want to waste your time trying to come up with a proposal that we can't even look at. So I would send you again to the Boston Community Preservation site and just review.
Yeah, but to my knowledge, this falls well within that. And we've also applied to this, basically the same project for other CPAs, and it has never been a problem.
Okay, good.
All right. We did the steps on the Playhouse, didn't we?
Yeah, and we also did the trim at the Playhouse too, which is the exact thing we're asking for the barn. It's the trim.
Okay, great.
To preserve the interior of what's there.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we will look forward to receiving your proposal.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have anything? All right, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your proposals, and thank you for maintaining our town.
We're doing our best. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.